What would be better than an October-long weekend in Stowe, Vermont? Beautiful foliage, crackling fires, crisp, clear air, and hearty autumn harvest dinners. What possibly could go wrong? Well, an Airbnb became our chilling nightmare. In the second week of October, fall foliage is at its finest in Vermont. My girlfriend Pam and I planned a getaway at an idyllic cabin on the edge of a mountain with magnificent views. We booked the Airbnb from Friday through Sunday to give us plenty of time to hike and explore the quaint villages in the area. We planned apple cider tasting, visiting Ben & Jerry's ice cream, and blueberry pancakes with Vermont maple syrup. Before our arrival, the cabin's owner emailed the code to the front door so we could come anytime and make ourselves comfortable. We arrived late morning on Friday and took the gondola to the cliff house for a scenic lunch before going to the Airbnb. It was going to be a fantastic weekend. The process of checking in at the cabin was seamless. When we entered the cabin, we immediately fell in love. It was cozy cabin decor with a wood-burning fireplace and a picture window that filled the room with sunlight. The cabin had that wonderful aroma of pine and autumn leaves mixed together. There were 3 bedrooms listed on Airbnb, but one was locked. We presumed for the owner's personal space. We didn't need it anyway. It was just us. We stowed, pun intended, our luggage in the second bedroom to leave the master bedroom romantic. Having the clutter of our clothes in the same room would be distracting. We settled in for the night, picked a movie on Netflix, and lit a warm fire. Afterward, Pam and I took a long soak in the hot tub on the deck and stargazed before bed. We went for a trail hike in a yellow wood the following morning. Robert Frost got his inspiration on a day like this. It's beautiful to walk in silence. It's an introspective, peaceful experience. After the hike, we returned to the cabin where I showered and dressed for dinner. When I entered the living room, Pam said she didn't know I liked punk rock. I said, "What are you talking about?" She said, "I heard you in the shower banging on punk music and thought it really funny of me." I said I didn't listen to any music at all. She said she needed to shower and dress for dinner, which would take a little time. I sat in the overstuffed armchair and picked up my cell phone to peruse Facebook posts. As Pam showered, I too heard the thumping of punk rock, but it wasn't coming from the shower. It was coming from the third bedroom. I messaged the Airbnb host and told him a radio was left on in the locked bedroom. He said he knew nothing about it, but maybe his wife had left some of her stuff in the room and locked it, but he had not. He would ask his wife. Pam came back from showering and was dressed for dinner. I should mention my conversation with the owner. It just slipped my mind as we selected what restaurant to go to. We enjoyed a wonderful dinner in Stowe and walked around town shopping boutique shops. We relaxed in a park listening to a group of boys with a guitar singing love songs. The host called as we were driving back to the cabin and said his wife hadn't locked the door, and if we would like, he would come and unlock it for us. I said, yeah, that would be great. When we returned, Pam headed to the couch and searched for a movie on Netflix, and I listened again at the locked bedroom door. I still could hear music and a rustling sound inside. While Pam was still curled up on the couch, I went outside and round back of the cabin where I could boost myself up and look in the window of the third bedroom. I was horrified. This super skinny kid was in the room, maybe 6 feet tall, shirtless, sporting a chest tattoo. He was dancing on top of the bed holding a portable radio. He looked me dead in the eye, and this crazy man's smile crossed his face with pure enjoyment. It was so creepy. I screamed for Pam, "Get out of the house." I ran back, grabbed our luggage, and told Pam to run for the car. On the drive into town, Pam called the owner and told him to call the police because a man was in the house. We got a call back 40 minutes later, and the host reported that the police had inspected the house. The third bedroom was open when they arrived, and no one was there. However, there was evidence that someone had lived in the room for several days. He apologized for the scare and promised a full refund. We could not return to the cabin because our nerves still twitched in shock. We booked a hotel in town and continued our retreat until Sunday. I still have nightmares of that dancing skinny kid with the crazy man's smile dancing on the bed. The thought that he was in that cabin with us as we slept was terrifying. Pumpkin Land was a seasonal event held with a huge pumpkin patch at a dairy farm. As little kids, we always looked forward in anticipation to Pumpkin Land. The event was always held on the last Saturday and Sunday before Halloween. There was a multitude of farm entertainment, feeding goats and hay rides behind a tractor, walking a spooky corn maze, and petting the cows. An ice cream bar also served the best ice cream in the world. As a kid, I always knew I'd get the maple walnut. The main event was picking your own pumpkin to take home to carve a jack-o'-lantern. I always looked forward to Young's Dairy event. One year in particular, I was very excited. I was 7 and kids were to be rewarded for coming in costumes. I was again going to be Marvel's Captain America. He was my superhero. My brother and sister were excited too. My brother is Spider-Man and my sister is a fairy princess. My sister was only 5 and my brother was 9. When we arrived, my brother wanted to do the corn maze, Cindy wanted to feed the goats, and I wanted to take the haunted hayride. My brother begged that we do the corn maze first and promised to ride the haunted hay wagon and feed the goats. The corn maze is pretty spooky, and I started to chicken out. Dad said it was okay. Mom would take Cindy to feed the goats, and we would wait for my brother at the end of the maze trail. While waiting, I had to pee. Dad and I went to the restroom at the ice cream bar. There were many people there, so we had to wait our turn. I finished first and went outside. I waited a long time and got worried because Dad never came out. So I returned to the restroom and my dad wasn't there. I started to panic as I was alone. At 7, being lost alone is a frightening experience. So I'm standing there with a sad face in my Captain America costume. And man comes up to me and asks, "Where are your parents, kid?" I told him I couldn't find my dad. He said, "No worries, we'll find him." He took my hand, which was very reassuring. He pulled out his cell phone and spoke with someone as we walked. I only remember him saying, "I'm with him right now." And I remember him looking down at me with a warm smile. Then he said that my dad was in the parking lot waiting for me and would take me to him. And he continued leading me, gripping my hand. I might have been only 7, but I was an intelligent kid and knew the man was lying. My dad never carried a cell phone, only Mom. I was sure as sure could be that this stranger did not know my dad. How could he have even known who I was under my Captain America mask? As the stranger marched me to the entrance in the parking lot, I saw a female employee. I started tugging on her shirt, saying, excuse me, until I had her attention. Then I shouted, "I don't know this man. Please help me." The man smiled at her and said, "I'm a friend of his father and I'm taking him to his dad." But she said kindly to the stranger, "Here, let him stand with me, and I'll make an announcement over the loudspeaker. It will be the safest way to locate his father," the man said. "Oh, how kind of you," dropped my hand, walked off into the crowd, and disappeared. The employee announced that a child by my name was missing his father, and he would please come to guest services. Eventually, father appeared. The employee told him of the potential predator and the possible attempted kidnapping. He was very grateful and thanked her repeatedly for saving me from something dreadful. We returned to Pumpkin Land, found my brother, sister, and Mom, and had a wonderful time. I was too young to understand how horrible that situation was, but my parents said I was smart and did the right thing. As an adult, I am more sickened by what could have happened. My favorite time of year is when the leaves have changed color and dance in different shades of yellow, orange, and red. It is a magical time in upstate New York. My boyfriend and I love to drive the winding roads and soak in the colors, walking on paths along bubbling streams. This October, we went to his father's vacation home to go camping in the woods surrounding the house. The house had all the needed camping gear, tents, and sleeping bags. Sure, we could sleep in the house, but being under the stars in October is fantastic. It's better than camping in the summer because there are far fewer bugs, and the scent of the foliage is different. It carries an aroma of peace, especially under the stars. I've been camping here before and know the best campsite. It is a small clearing with a magnificent view of the sky. It's big enough for our tent and our campfire. It is secluded, and only we know how to find it. We set up our tent and built a campfire in a ring of stones left from our previous campout. We sat up for hours roasting hot dogs and eating chips. We spoke about the universe and whether space aliens exist. We sat with the sleeping bag wrapped around us, gazing at the heavens. As the night became cold, we slipped into the tent. Bobby put a couple of logs on the fire to keep it crackling. It made me feel safer keeping the animals away. Another crackling sound interrupted the night as we snuggled in our sleeping bags. Besides the fire, it was the crunching of leaves. I put my finger to my lip, and we looked quizzically at each other. I was nervous, and Bobby could tell he was nervous as well because a fire usually keeps most wildlife away. Animals seldom approach a fire. But this crunching was getting louder and closer, Bobby whispered, human. The footsteps stopped before the fire, and we saw a shadow of a man fall on the tent. Then, the shadow sat in our camp chair. Bobby unzipped his sleeping bag and peeked out the tent flap. He expected to see someone sitting at our campfire, but to his surprise, no one was there. The fire was burning and the chairs were empty. Bobby climbed out of the tent and walked around our campsite with his flashlight. He looked behind the trees and circled around our secluded spot, but nothing. I whispered to Bobby from inside the tent. "Did you see anything?" He whispered, "Nothing." Not a thing, but certainly something was out here. I got my nerve up and uncovered my head to the tent to look at the tent wall. To my shock, a man is sitting at the fire in one of the chairs. "Bobby," I shouted, "someone is in the chair." "What are you talking about?" he replied. "There is no one here." Bobby looked at the tent's wall, and sure enough, he could see the man's shadow sitting at our fire. But when he looked back at the fire, no one was there. Both the chairs were empty. Bobby whispered, "We need to go, and go now." I felt the urgency and unzipped my sleeping bag, and Bobby took my hand to help me out of the tent. When I looked at the fire and saw no one there, my heart raced and I panicked. But Bobby held my hand, covering my mouth to prevent a scream with his other. "Quiet, follow me." He led us in near total darkness back to his father's vacation home. As we stumbled through the darkness with our flashlights, we heard a horrific breathing sound that stayed several yards behind us, just outside of our flashlight beam. Then, there would be a snapping of a tree branch or the brush of a boot on the ground, scraping the dirt. We moved as fast as we could, not caring if we scratched ourselves on the brush we ran through. We could see the vacation home rise out of the darkness ahead. Bobby fumbled with the keys but got the door open, and we bolted ourselves inside. I felt unsafe, as we were still in the forest with nothing around us but trees for a mile in every direction. I was neurotic with paralyzing fear. I could not sleep. When morning painstakingly dawned, I was exhausted. Bobby hiked back to the campsite to gather our belongings. Everything was there, everything in their place except one camp chair that was overturned. He hurried back, and we sped away. This was to be our last camping adventure, and it was a chilling nightmare.